the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka, is gracing an event at the FCC. We are pleased to have him here. He will be going to assignment in a few days. I would like to request our Treasurer, Mr. P.M. Narayanan, to welcome the High Commissioner.
Thank you, Venkat. This is a honor for the Foreign Correspondent Clubs of South Asia. You are being here for the second time, and it's a farewell reception. And I welcome you to this program, and we'll start it right now. Thank you.
Thanks, PM. May I now invite the High Commissioner to say a few words, and then he will take questions after that.
Thank you, Venkat, and I must really thank you for both inviting me here and also all the support you have personally lent to me during my term here. Today, my visit, I have no prepared text as such. It is just to thank all of you. I have been here for 2 years, and to thank you for the support you have given. Last year was a difficult year for us, and as you know, India supported us, and without your support, it would also have not been possible, because I know the media in many different ways helped me, and especially to get our message across. And as I explained to you in our last discussion, I'm not going to go over all that. India's role was critical for us last year to stabilize the economy, and also for us to engage the IMF, the World Bank, and the international donor community. This year, we focus more on the way forward with India, especially to look at our recovery agenda. In that context, our president visited Sri Lanka, India, a few months ago. And there is a joint statement which you may have seen between our president and Prime Minister Modi, which outlines the way forward as far as economic cooperation is concerned, and also the growth agenda, because last year our focus was stabilization, this year is growth. So I think basically, if not for India, we would not have been able to stabilize. That is a fact. And in the recovery too, India becomes key, because our economy would require tourism, our economy would require trade, then also we would require to diversify our lines of income, and India would become very important in that context. The follow-up to our president's visit is taking place now over the last couple of months. Just a few days ago, the two chief trade negotiators met to discuss the expansion of trade between India and Sri Lanka. That was part of the joint declaration. There are discussions going on the feasibility study, on a feasibility study for the oil pipeline between Sri Lanka and India, a feasibility study for the further progressing the electricity connection between India and Sri Lanka. So right after the president left, and things have begun to move in that direction as well. So I'm not going to evaluate, what I did or didn't do in the past 2 years. That is up to everybody else to do, I think. But I am here to thank you, because the support I got here, when I go back, my memories are mostly with people, the connections I established, the links I established, I was able to, the friendships I made, and the humanity that is India. Because I sometimes find how touching the Indian normal citizenry was when we were in crisis. It's something I saw it personally, and one example I give people is, I remember at the height of the crisis, I was going back to Sri Lanka. I was in Chennai. I had met with the chief minister there. As you know, Chief Minister Stalin also helped us with emergency supplies. And I had asked my Deputy High Commissioner at the time to arrange for me to, he's from Andhra Pradesh, to arrange some Andhra, to go to an Andhra restaurant. And it was a roadside restaurant. I had lunch there and came out. And there was this gentleman waiting by my car, just a normal gentleman who was walking by. He came up to me and he held my hand and with both hands and said, "It'll be all right, it'll be all right, don't worry." And if I were to, that is the recollection that I will carry from here when I go back. The humanity, the human face of India. So thank you again for this invitation, and thank you again for all the support you have given. Thank you.
Thank you, High Commissioner. We now invite questions. Yeah, Siddhant.
So you mentioned about the Indian support when it comes to the ongoing economic crisis. If you can give an update as to what is the status of your country right now. We saw the visit by the French president as well. The role the French side has played when it comes to the economic support for Sri Lanka.
The whole focus now is on one side, the debt restructuring. And as you know, the Paris Club plays an important role in that for sovereign debt restructuring. So the debt restructuring process, the discussions are going on. We hope that we will be able to conclude it in the coming months, coming weeks, before the end of the year anyway. So, I mean, France's involvement is in that context as well. Then the IMF mission is in Colombo at the moment to review progress and to make a determination on releasing the first tranche. So that is also a critical part of this whole process because we need to get through that. So the coming weeks will be extremely important as far as both the IMF discussions are concerned and as far as the debt restructuring is also concerned. Meanwhile, of course, we have taken strong austerity measures. Revenues have to be raised, taxation had to be raised. The cost of electricity has gone up, cost of petroleum has gone up. So, I mean, the ordinary people, in the sense the poor and the middle class, are suffering. There is no question about it. And this is the one of the most painful aspects of this restructuring. Inflation has dropped. Inflation is somewhat under control. But equally, demand has been compressed because we still haven't got our growth going. Because the last 2 years, our economy has shrunk by about 10% if you put it together, 2 years. So we need to now somehow grow the economy. That is the key issue. And there, tourism will play an important role. Indian tourism accounts for about 20% of our tourism now. It is the number one tourism market for us, source market by far. Therefore, our focus has to be on growth, somehow to get the economy moving. Yes, please.
Yeah, Manish.
Excellency, some European countries like Italy are having a rethink on the Belt and Road Initiative. And in light of Sri Lanka's own debt distress, are you rethinking the BRI and how are you planning to address the colossal debt you have incurred with China? That's number one. And number two, what about Sri Lanka's aspirations to join multilateral forums like BRICS, for example? Thank you.
Well, our focus now is really on restructuring our debt and stabilizing the economy. I mean, it's only after that we can start thinking of the broader issues. I think till the end of this year, we'll have to concentrate on that. And in that context, China is obviously part of that conversation because we have debt to China. But our basic focus has to be to restructure the debt before we start thinking of anything further than that. Then on joining various bodies, not only, there is talk of us joining RCEP, the trade bloc. The president is very keen on that. There are discussions going on because this is all related to how we can grow our economy, and that we are working. We are willing to reach out because we need to expand our income channels. Because if you look at our economy, it's a very narrow economy that we have. We have, if you look at it before COVID, we had about $7.5 billion in remittance income, which has dropped now to about 6 billion. It dropped much lower before, but now it's about 6 billion this year, I think. Then we have about $5 billion in garment apparel exports, of which 2 billion we add value on, and 3 billion is on raw material imports. This year, we will see a drop of about 20% in our garment exports because of the US market situation. Then we have about $2 billion for tea. With all that we do with tea, which finally our income is $2 billion. And then we have about $1 billion in IT services. Tourism has never realized its full potential because always when we start building up, it gets pushed down. So we hope that we can sustain that, because the peak was in 2019, which was about $4 billion, but that was the highest we have ever seen. But we have never realized our full potential in tourism. So the focus for us would be to try to expand our sources of income. So that's why one has to look at all these new networks. But I think in the short term, India provides the best opportunity. One is for tourism. The other is to look at other ways of expanding trade with India. That's why I think the trade negotiations with India become important. I think these talks have started, and we hope by about March next year that we will be able to have some kind of a understanding on the trade side.
Hi, Commissioner. Hello. Hi, Commissioner. This is Manish Jha. Of course, yours is a sovereign states, and you have friends across. But you have two large friends, large countries, India and China. So compared, do you feel burdened that you have to navigate? But you also have to explain every time to each other in the many contexts in terms of security, economy, or you say also say economic help which you get. Do you feel burdened? Number one, and second, how do you differentiate the foreign policy of these two large countries? You know, you call them a special friend, either India or China. Could you explain? I mean, how do you look at? Thank you.
I wouldn't say a burden, but challenge probably yes. I mean, the burden probably no. It is a challenge. I mean, we have always, I think going back to the Ramayana to now, our location has been strategic one way or the other, and we've had to deal with that. And our leaders through millennia have dealt with it in different ways. Because, I mean, during the Cold War, we had issues with India as well sometimes, because the US and India were then the rivals in some ways in this region. Here, now is the Asian century, and the two giants are India and China. We basically, when it comes to security, I think that's where we have to start. Obviously, India's security and our security have to be the same because we are located where we are. So that will be a starting point, I think. And that is easy for me to say, but it's a long conversation because we have discussions on different developments. And at least during my period, what I hoped for was clear communication, frank communication, and trying to build trust on that. President's visit, recent visit, I think set the foundation for that. He spent quality time with the Prime Minister. He spent quality time with the External Affairs Minister, quality time with the NSA. And I think at my level, what we can do is to keep that communication flowing. If our leaders can communicate and build trust, because there will be different challenges. I mean, to quote, I think, Donald Rumsfeld, I mean, it's not somebody people quote all the time, but I use this quote. He says, known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. And when it comes to these kinds of relationships, there are known knowns which we can deal with. There are known unknowns which we have to deal with, and there are unknown unknowns. And if you are not communicating, it becomes a problem. And so that's all I think what we can do. Can you set up a framework that is predictable to deal with this? I don't think so at the moment because there is too much uncertainty. But with communication and trying to anticipate, which is very important, I think, then only we can move forward. And trust. Trust is key. If trust breaks, it's very difficult. So I think in this period I have tried, and I think my successor will continue that process. That's what we can, I think all we can do, I think.
What is ahead for you, High Commissioner? What are your future plans? Will you continue to be associated in some form with Sri Lanka-India relations? While wishing you all the best, we hope we will see you in Delhi in some other capacity in future and frequently.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm flattered. No, definitely. I mean, India, the relationship, it's personal to me. It has been for a long time. So that will, I mean, it will be always there. But my immediate plan is for the next 3 months just to be a private citizen, talk to people, try to understand what is going on. Last year, Sri Lanka, I mean, was a milestone year for Sri Lanka, what happened politically and what happened in our society. And I think one needs to understand that better. So my plan is I go on the 1st of October till the end of the year. I want to just be a private citizen and see, what the country looks like and what people think. Then I will make up my mind, I mean, as to what to do, I think. But thank you for the sentiments. I definitely with India, I will always keep the relationship. That's not I mean, that it is personal to me and it's in my heart. So,
Your Excellency, sir,
yes.
you have described the importance of tourism and that to the tourists from India. What is Sri Lanka's plan to develop the Ramayana circuit to attract tourists from India?
Well, there is, I mean, the Ramayana, the origins of the circuit actually, I mean, I had a role in that. In 2008, I was the tourism minister here in Sri Lanka. And actually, Prime Minister Modi was the chief minister in Gujarat. And I met him. I was invited to speak at a Vibrant Gujarat meeting by him at that time. And we discussed the idea of a Buddhist circuit and a Ramayana circuit. That's where the discussion started. And the idea was from Gujarat to Sri Lanka, we have a Ramayana circuit, and from Sri Lanka to Gujarat, all the way through a Buddhist circuit. Actually, we announced it there, and we started researching the main Ramayana sites. Then, of course, I moved on, and my successors continued the process. And today, they have identified between 40 and 50 Ramayana sites. There are the Vivekananda Foundation in a center in Colombo also was involved in that. Now travel agencies have started to pick that up in different sites. Of course, the best known site is Ashoka Vatika. Of course, that's the key site. But the spot from Sanjeevani Vatika to what we call Diurumpola, where the Agni Pariksha took place. I mean, there are a large number of sites there. So it is moving. Travel agents are working on it. In fact, today we just signed an agreement with DK Publications from the UK to publish a book on travel or Ramayana travel. And we hope it will be by the middle of next year, it will be out. That was one of our initiatives as well. That will be actually an international travel book. And it's on the Ramayana trail from Sri Lanka to India to Sri Lanka. So there are initiatives like that. The government is also promoting it. But I find today people are traveling just on, I mean, they get on the internet, find the places, and they go there. So now we have to build the infrastructure there, the facilities there to move ahead. But this, I mean, specifics to today was interestingly, it's coincidental, but just now the publishers came to us and we finalized everything on that. So this book will be out. It will be at a very high standard, internationally recognized publisher. They are part of, I think, Random House Penguin, no? Penguin. So it will be at an international level, the book, and that an initiative that we took.
High Commissioner, yeah. Go ahead.
Sir, my question was regarding something which is in the news right now, that is the India-Canada relationship. I'm asking this question because the Canadian Prime Minister had also made certain remarks regarding which Sri Lanka saw as internal affairs. So what do you make out of the current situation between India and Canada? in the backdrop of what Canada has been doing when it comes to Sri Lanka?
I think India's response has been unequivocal and also firm and direct. And I think, as far as we are concerned, I mean, we support India on that. Having said that, also, I mean, in my lifetime, now I'm 60 years old, 40 years of my life we have spent facing various forms of terrorism in Sri Lanka. I have lost many friends, colleagues to terrorism. We have all lost, I mean, many Sri Lankans have died to terrorism. So therefore, I mean, our position on these matters, I think, is very clear, because we have endured and we have suffered. And as a country that has gone through that, I mean, tolerance for terrorism is zero tolerance.
Go ahead.
Sir, hello, can you hear me? Yeah. So, Sri Lanka was in bad economic situations earlier. What is the situation now, and what is the type of cooperation that India is, extending now at this moment?
The India, I mean, the last year, the support was to stabilize the economy to the extent of $4 billion you provided us. Then subsequently, your leaders reached out to the World Bank and the IMF to provide support for us, to encourage them to do that. And you must remember that the $4 billion was provided at a time when nobody was willing to provide the support, and it was provided it was provided unconditionally, and as and when we required it at the time, in fact. Then subsequently, when the debt restructuring had to take place, the Indian government stepped up and provided the necessary financing assurances to the IMF also. They led the way. Before the Paris Club, actually, they led the way. So that was at that time. Then came the recovery part of it. India felt that they would like to support us on the growth phase, and that was announced when our Prime President was here. The expansion, restarting the trade agreement, the trade discussions, rupee trade expansion, then looking at electricity connectivity, oil connectivity between oil pipeline connectivity. These are, I mean, these are the types of support. In addition, India has provided support for the railways in Sri Lanka. I mean, there's been material support, and you have continued to. Even recently, there was line of credit provided for the railways. So despite all this, the debt restructuring and the uncertainty, India has continued to back us that way. So that has been the situation.
Firstly, Excellency, I'd like to compliment you for starting the Remain Trail. I have been in promoting tourism to Sri Lanka for the last 45 years, and as GSA of Sri Lankan Airlines. I must tell all my fellow members of the Foreign Correspondents Club, as an Indian, I think this is the best time to visit Sri Lanka. You get very good value for money, and a lot of, think about the recession and other things. Maybe I don't understand economics that well, but we recently organized the Travel Agents Convention there, and more than 1,000 people were there with their wives, and they all came back very happy, and they've all started promoting Sri Lanka in a big way. So I think the value for money is there. The hotel rates are quite reasonable compared to India. It is cheaper to organize a wedding in Sri Lanka than to do it in India. Even after spending the airfare, you'll save maybe 1 crore rupees if your wedding budget is 5 crores. So what I'm saying is that, a lot of us are in the media. Sometimes media also creates a hype. Just like on Jantar Mantar, there is some agitation going on. I was there in the height of it. And it was only a localized, protest which had been highlighted in the international media. But now I think things are back to normal, and we have so many inquiries for Sri Lanka that we can't offer the seats. All our flights to Colombo are full, and we want more flights. That's our problem. And my question one is on investment opportunities. Today, Indians are not the number one shoppers in Singapore, Malaysia, Dubai. Dubai, when the recession was there, it was Indian tourists who turned around, and even in UK, we are number one. So, what are you doing to invest to attract Indian investment in hotels, in real estate, and even in a lot of ancillary units?
I mean, our efforts have been two ways. One is targeted, talking to important, at least during my period, leading business houses here and encouraging them to invest. And many have. I mean, Adani Group has invested in the terminal, in the West Terminal. ITC was an early investment, but they hopefully they will. It's nearly now 400 or 500. We hope so, and it's about a $400 or $500 investment. It's not small, and it's the biggest hotel outside. India. So there is investor interest at that level, but I think as the economy stabilizes and there is more confidence, I think that's when this will happen. One of the interesting developments I see is there is a casino coming up in Sri Lanka of international standard, developed by a local developer, and it will be managed by an international casino company, one of the global players, I think. That will maybe a very interesting point for Indians, because we will have in this region a high-end casino that will probably be operational next year, towards the middle of next year. There are initiatives. The Tourism Bureau is promoting. There are a lot of promotions going on. They have retained companies to support tourist promotion here. Our investment board of investment is also doing it. But I think what really works finally is business to business dialogue, discussion. And that is also happening, and we have to keep improving on that. And then if the trade agreement also is expanded and there is some new structure that comes up, that will also be good, because there will be more opportunities for our private sector and, of course, Indian private sector as well.
High Commissioner, the two sides have been talking about this power grid between India and Sri Lanka. And I remember reading in the Sri Lankan media about your side people making the point that there are two options. One is underground cable, and the other one is, above the sea. And they were saying, while the underground one is an expensive proposition, the one above ground may be cheaper to begin with, but maintenance is going to cost a lot of money. Now, according to preliminary plans, the connectivity is from where to where from in India to where in Sri Lanka. That's one. Number two is the oil pipeline between the two countries. And they will be connecting which point in your country and which point in India. I was reading in the papers, I think today or was it yesterday, that the Indians and Australians are planning to work together to invest in third countries, to build infrastructure and all that. And is Australia in the reckoning, or are you people planning to invite Australia to consider funding this, either the power grid or the pipeline?
On the points of connectivity, I think there are various options. One is along the sandbank itself, that because that's how you can probably have it on a very shallow basis. Yeah, exactly. And so that's under discussion. I think, as you said, there are various views whether it should be overhead or whether it should be underwater. And I'm told technology also now allows one to do it underwater cheaper. There is discussion like that. So there were several rounds of discussions between our electricity board and your authorities here, and they have decided yet. But now the MOU was signed a few months ago. Now I think hopefully they can start in earnest to move it forward. On the pipeline, they are just starting the feasibility study. They've just met to discuss that, and there will be several rounds more. I think it will have to be. It's a multi-product pipeline, and they will have to select a refinery in the south to which it has to be connected based on that refinery's capacity and its access, and it is to be initially to Trincomalee, to the tank farm, so that the tank farm could be connected. There is talk of maybe another pipeline coming down the west coast of Sri Lanka, but that is still up for discussion. What is being discussed at the moment is to Trincomalee and to the tank farm. So I think in the coming months, the feasibility study for the pipeline, I hope, will start now. The electricity grid, I think the discussions will move, and then we have to start actually looking at how it's going to be implemented. It took a long time for this MOU to be signed. As you know, there was a lot of discussion. So I think we have, the first step, but then from paper to ground, that's another process. But at least we are on paper now.
And I also remember reading in your papers lately that the ETCA, the Economic Trade Agreement Cooperation Agreement,
Yes.
I think they're going to start talks
Yeah,
next
just,
month.
No, just when was the 19th? No? On the 19th, the two chief negotiators met virtually,
Yes.
and they are now in the process of working out a timeline. So
Okay.
there will be physical meetings after that, and I think the idea is to try to conclude it towards March next year.
Okay.
I mean, whatever has to be done to conclude it by March next year. That's the discussion at the
So
moment.
there is this is happening after a gap of 4 years, I think.
Yes, I mean, last time I think we had 11 rounds or something.
11
like
rounds,
that, yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
But this time I think it will probably be time bound. I think so. Hopefully, let's see what comes out of it. I mean, I can't forecast that, but the idea is to do it on a time bound basis.
Okay. Your president gave an interview. He was speaking at Carnegie Foundation in New York during his recent visit, and in which he made it absolutely clear that the ship from China, which is going to visit Sri Lanka next month, it does not indulge in spying. And there is a standard operating procedure which is applicable to all countries which wants to send their ships to your country. And so, it's not true that these ships indulge in spying. And Miss Newland met your foreign minister in New York, in which she expressed her concern. The Indians also, whenever a Chinese ship goes to Sri Lanka, is anxious about these ships indulging in spying, because we have the Kudamkulam nuclear plant and several other sensitive things which are very close to your country. Have the Indians raised this issue with you recently, and have you given any kind of assurance that the Chinese ships visiting your country are not going to indulge in any spying?
I think this is an ongoing discussion. I mean, with the types of because I think when I was talking about known unknowns and known knowns, this is probably now a known known. A little maybe 6 months ago, it would have been a known unknown, possibly. I don't know. Basically, the SOPs that are being discussed still, I mean, they have not been completed yet, were originally to deal with military or naval vessels, because the earlier ship that was under consideration was a naval vessel. Now there is a conversation on more survey vessels, which are not really naval vessels. They are belonging to research organizations. Now, Sri Lankan research organizations have signed MOUs with, for example, our National Aquatic Resources Agency has signed an MOU with a counterpart organization in China, I think in 2017, to deal with surveys and survey ships coming in. One of our universities, I believe, have signed an MOU. Our Central Cultural Fund has signed an MOU. Different types of surveys. The Central Cultural Fund has signed an MOU to do with shipwrecks, including the former Chinese Admiral Shang Ho's his visit, his fleet to do surveys, archaeological surveys on that. Now, so these are the ships you are referring to now fall under a different category. So therefore, the discussions on SOPs are, these conversations are taking place at a technical level to try to work these SOPs out. That is where we are at the moment, as to how to define exactly, what would work as far as the SOPs are concerned. So initially, the line was on military ships. Now there is an expanded line being discussed. Of course, these SOPs that would apply to everybody. I mean, that's how it's supposed to work. So that is the conversation. And I see this as being ongoing. This is not going to end today or tomorrow. I mean, this will keep coming up, and we are unrealistic if we think that it's going to go away. And only way this is going to work is by clear communication and trust building. And there will be times when our relationship is, goes up and down. But my hope is that with the dialogue, we'll be able to maintain the trust. So at the moment, there are conversations and discussions going on. Definitely, it's ongoing. But this is the difference between the earlier ships and the present ships, because this is now we are dealing with non-military vessels.
The other thing, High Commissioner, is about Tamil fishermen getting arrested because, the international maritime boundary line is only notional. I mean, there is nothing to indicate that, well, if you cross this, you get arrested or something like that. And every time your naval people pick up these Tamil fishermen and they take away their vessels and all that, Stalin makes a lot of noise, writes to the Prime Minister of India and say, please rescue them and all that. And I remember when Abul Kalam was the president, he went to your country and somebody asked him, how do you solve this problem? He was saying that perhaps, every alternate day or 3 days, Indian fishermen could be allowed to go into Sri Lankan waters, and the other 3 days, the Sri Lankan fishermen can go to the Indian waters to do the fishing, so that both the communities can survive. I mean, did this ever figure in official talks, and what do you think about such idea?
I think there are, in my view, three issues here. First is the legal issue. Obviously, we have our waters, you have your waters, and we have to respect each other. I mean, that is very clear. The second, I think, is the issue we often miss. That is the environmental and ecological issue. Because the real issue, even before coming to your conversation, is this whole concept of bottom trawling. Now, the Indian side of the fishing beds have been denuded through bottom trawling. Sri Lanka was somewhat safe because of the war period, because at that time there was no fishing going on. And now with this occurrence, we are having the bottom trawling taking place, and very soon the problem might get resolved naturally when there is no fish, because the whole that's good, because this is mass scale fishing. So I think the first decision to take before going anywhere else is to agree that there should be no bottom trawling, and policing it, enforcing it is the biggest challenge, because this is a livelihood matter. And there is that's where the problem is. Sri Lankan fishermen, and these are Sri Lankan Tamils who are fishing in the north. It's not not Sinhalese. Sri Lankan Tamil, the Sri Lankan fishermen have a issue because they are more artisanal. They don't have the equipment for bottom trawling, nor do they do it. So this is, I think, the first issue, and very often we miss it. And because for some reason we don't want to face that first. So my sort of humble advice would be that first we sort that out, and then look at how because without enforcing that, we can't really go anywhere, because very soon I think this problem will have a natural solution, which is sad in a way if it continues this way.
There is this question of Tamil refugees who live in refugee camps in Tamil Nadu, and quite a few of them expressed a desire to go back, and they said in the government of India, Tamil Nadu, they spend a lot of money for our upkeep here, but when we go back with empty hands, we won't know what to do. So they were requesting about the possibility of either government of India or government of Sri Lanka giving them some money so that they could begin their lives all over again. What is the latest situation on that? How many people have actually expressed a desire to go back? And those few who have gone back, are they able to make a living in Sri Lanka? What is the situation?
Yeah, I think we obviously, the citizens of Sri Lanka, we welcome them. The UNHCR has also they have a program where they help to the transport and resettle. And the Sri Lankan government also provides, access to land. There are programs. I think there are practical issues. One issue is the fact that I think many they have sort of second, third generation now, so they would like to be able to come back and forth from Sri Lanka. Are worried that they may not be able to come back because they are refugees here. I think now we have you can have passports. We are issuing. Near future, we will be issuing basically all country passports for the refugees. They have just started that process. So that means that they can travel anywhere if they wish. They will have the passport. That process has. I think how far they said very soon, no? Okay. So today we had a kind of a country team meeting, and our Deputy High Commissioner in Chennai informed us that they have advanced that quite a bit. So that is another situation. But I think livelihoods become important because at the moment with our economy, and especially in the north and the east, we have to, if there are no livelihoods, people will not come back. Many of them have relatives in the west. They would like to probably go there. So maybe with these passports, that's another option for them. But basically, nobody is stopping them from coming. But livelihoods have to be there. They have to feel, that they can have a vocation.
Four of the people who were involved in the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, they have been let off. They are Sri Lankan Tamils, and they're living in refugee camps. And I think Nalini went to the court saying that my husband, who also happens to be Sri Lankan Tamil, is in a refugee camp and is not being allowed to go to the Sri Lankan Deputy High Commission in Chennai to apply for a passport. And they sought the government's help or the court's help. What is the situation about that?
I don't know. It's way beyond me. I have to find out. I will check and let you know.
Yeah, I think
why don't you find out what it is?
they should be given passport
I
so
don't
that
know what it is.
they go back or something, whatever. If there are,
We will have to find out.
All right,
That's
okay.
way outside my way.
if there are no more questions, may I ask? There is a question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, please. Go ahead. Take the microphone.
Hello. Myself, MK Pandey from Diaspora Foundation. In fact, diaspora has become the currency of time. How do you see the spirit of contrast and variations between Sri Lankan diaspora and Indian diaspora? Secondly, diasporic studies is being taught in so many universities in India. What is happening in Sri Lankan universities?
No, it's a good question actually, because our president has set up an office of diaspora affairs for the first time, which I think, Niluka, it is under the president's office, no? Yeah, it's under the president's office that he has set it up. And a former deputy high commissioner in Chennai now is he was the ambassador also, no? Subsequently, he's now heading it. Diasporas are complex, as you know, and I don't think you can compare Indian diaspora, Sri Lankan diaspora, and any others. That would be a big mistake because I think each is specific. For us, I think we have about 1 million in the Tamil diaspora, roughly give or take. We have Sinhalese working in the Middle East. They are migrant workers plus living outside. That's again ballpark around 1 million. So roughly, just give or take 10% of our population is outside. So I think we have to deal with it on that basis, trying to understand the issues of each. The migrant workers are different. the Sri Sinhalese who are, there are refugees who have gone under various guises. That is different. And of course, the Tamil diaspora is also not monolithic. I mean, Canada is not identical to, I would say, UK or whatever it is. So what I think we are hoping to do is to engage them at that micro level. And it's a confidence building process because especially the Tamil diaspora, they left under from us. And as we were discussing also, I find that they also live in I'm using this word loosely, in a time warp. In the sense they remember the conditions under which they left, whatever they were. We may argue about it, but they have these recollections. And now they may be second generation, even third generation, and that is imprinted in their mind. So we have to engage, understand, because a lot of radical thinking on the nationalistic side, whether it's on the Sinhala side or the Tamil side, come from the diaspora. Diaspora, in a way, influences politics in Sri Lanka on both ends. I mean, traditionally, we think it only influences, let's say, the Tamil diaspora, but actually even the Sinhala diaspora has influence in politics in the South. And generally, it tends to be hardline also because of this particular situation. I think we have to work our way through it, be patient, build confidence, encourage people to come back, to take a look at things, not to basically be conditioned by what they believe. And it is a process. I don't think it's easy for us because our diaspora was formed maybe under different conditions to yours. Some of your diaspora may be similar to ours, others will be different. On the diaspora studies at the moment, I don't know of any university that is doing anything. I think there are people who have written theses, of course, at different levels. I have seen some papers. But we need to do much more work on this. On migrant workers, more work has been done. I don't equate that as diaspora, but still it is part of our sort of tapestry, at least the migrant workers. But I think the essential factor is to build trust and to encourage, not to be radical. I mean, that is the big challenge, because this radicalization sometimes is an issue because they have, a certain impression. And especially if it's the second, third generation, it is even sometimes more challenging. But on the other side, now I find in Sri Lanka, a lot of Tamil businessmen have come and started to invest in Sri Lanka. They are doing a lot of philanthropy in Sri Lanka. And I mean, there is a lot of interest, and that is happening, in fact, without government, which I think is the best. I mean, the idea that government must, mediate and to get in the middle of everything is not. I mean, the government should just guarantee, I think, that law and order is implemented and that basically security is there, and allow people to do their thing. Because there are many Tamil diaspora members I have found who have set up trusts. They are very successful trusts, and they are doing a lot of development work in the north and in the south. Many of them say they don't want to only work in the north, they want to have a southern presence as well. Some very wealthy people who have done very well in the west, who are sort of billionaires in dollar terms, they say we don't just want to work in the north, we want to show that we care. And so they would do a project in the north, in the east, and in the south, just to demonstrate that they are doing it across the board. So I think also to identify best practices like that and role models like that, and also to encourage that, I think we are making progress. If we can hold the present level of social stability, I think we might be able to move forward. I mean, that's my answer. But your situation is much more complex. Yeah, it's much more complex.
Your Excellency, I want to know the present status of devolution of power to the Tamil areas by making an effective changes in the constitution of Sri Lanka.
The Constitution has the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, which was in 1987 when the Lanka Accord was signed between Mr. Jayawardena and Rajiv Gandhi. Part of the accord included the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. Now that is in the Constitution. There has been differing opinions on the level of devolution on two areas: land powers and police powers. whether the police powers should be to the extent of what you have in India, where you have state level police forces, or whether our police, given the fact that the country is much smaller, should be more centralized, and that you can have Tamil language speaking police officers at that level, but it will not be autonomous. Land powers also, to what extent should land powers be devolved? So that is one issue. Our president presently has said that he will work on devolving land powers, but on police powers, he would not be able to move beyond what is there on paper, in practice now. And that has not been acceptable to many Tamil parties. So there is a difference of opinion there. In my view, I think it's a good starting point for implementation. But there is another issue. During the 2015 administration, with the support of all the political parties, including the Tamil opposition parties, there was an effort to amend the elections aspect of the Provincial Council Act, that to change the way the voting was going to be done. And it was well intentioned, because at the moment we have a proportional representation system. This is complicated. I don't want to go into too much detail. I think you know this. With what we call preference votes when voting. But they wanted to have a mixed system, proportional representation plus first past the post. And they also had to redefine the boundaries to do that. And Parliament voted to do that, to go through that process. Unfortunately, Parliament couldn't conclude the process, and now it is stuck at that. So there is an issue about holding the election, because there has to be a parliamentary mandate to either hold it under the old system or go into the new system. It has got frozen in Parliament. There has to be a vote in Parliament to implement that. And there is no consensus on this, because there is disagreement now, because the Parliament is split. So as a consequence, there is an issue about holding elections in the provincial councils. So these are two issues. One is what you devolve, and the other is the electoral system, to make sure that elections can be held, how you create that system. So there are many opposition parties which are saying, let's go back to the old system. Let's not talk about this new system, because the new system has created too much confusion. But to do anything, Parliament has to vote, and a 2/3 majority has to be obtained in Parliament, which is not going to be easy to do. And that's where it is stuck at the moment. But if everybody agrees in Parliament, or there is some broad consensus, then we can do that. But at the moment, it is stuck in Parliament at the moment. But the president has very clearly indicated that he's on the implementation side. He is willing to look at land powers, because what he says is his mandate, based on his mandate and his understanding of his mandate, this is the best I can do. If you want to go beyond this, then it has to be a larger mandate, and that has to be done later. So it is, I mean, you can call it politics, you can call it democracy, but that's where I stuck.
Right. May I request Simran to propose a vote of thanks and present to the High Commissioner a memento.
From all of us here at the FCC, I wish to thank you for coming here and being with us today in the evening. It's been a pleasure having you here again. And we wish you all the best as you go back to Sri Lanka. And we hope we'll keep seeing you, not just back in India, but at FCC again, whenever you come back. And I would also like to take this opportunity to wish the Deputy High Commissioner who's here, it's his birthday today. So from all of us, a very happy birthday to you. And this event has been streamlined live on Twitter and Facebook. And this will be available in the archives section of the FCC webpage. So anytime if you want to revisit the discussion, it will be available in the archives section. With this, once again, thank you so much for coming here and being with us today evening. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You can just get this, our souvenir.
That is kind. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you for inviting me. And let me do that. Yes. I have your number. Yes, please. Thank you.